Welcome. My name is Antigone Ladd, and I am pleased to bring you another story from World War II. This time from a different perspective, from a branch of the service you may not have heard of before, the Nurse Cadet Corps. Let me introduce you to Vetti Jacobs Thomas, known by her nickname Vetti. Vetti was a college student in nursing school in York, Pennsylvania during World War II. Then, as the wounded servicemen were brought back from the battlefields, the government rushed to build hospital space to care for them, and the need for nurses was desperate. To fill the service gap, the government turned to nursing colleges, asking for their top students to be rushed into service even before they graduated. And that is how Vetti Jacobs, nursing student, was recruited by the Public Health Service to become a cadet nurse. Here is Vetti's colorful story of her World War II service, which we taped for the World War II American Experience Museum here in Gettysburg. When the war broke out, had you finished your nurse's training?
No, that's why I was a cadet nurse. I was a cadet nurse in the war.
Did you volunteer?
No, I didn't volunteer, but Mrs. Ketterman volunteered for me. When the nurses got scarce in the Army, they needed the cadets. They had to have more nurses, and they ran out of nurses. And when they notified the schools, they told you how many they needed and how many your amount of that they paid would qualify. So we had 9, and you could pick where to go, but she picked the nurses. So I was one of the 9, and I could pick Army, 4 went to the Navy, 4 went to the Army, and 1 could go to the Indian Reservation. Well, I wanted the Indian Reservation, but there was a girl in our class who was from there, who lived near the Indian Reservation when she was a little girl, Dottie Gensler. She married John Gensler at the Gensler Meeting Mill in East Berlin. Mm-hmm. Dottie Gensler is from there. So Mrs. Ketterman gave her that. And then I said, well, give me whatever. And I got in the Army. And I was sent.
Do you remember what year that was?
Would I say 1944?
Okay.
The war stopped when I was down there. I graduated from there. I didn't get back to my hospital.
Where did they send you?
They sent me to McGuire General Hospital, which is 7 minutes by bus into Richmond.
Richmond, Virginia.
Which was Virginia. That's the first time I was away from home and out of state action. So I did get a little homesick for about a week or 2, but I loved it. We had 3,000 beds. Well, that was a huge hospital for me, from York Hospital, with 300 beds. Now, so let me tell you, the first day I went there, let me tell you what happened to me. I turned up, I got on the ward, went to where they sent me. It was an amputee ward. Almost killed me when I looked around and saw all the boys without legs and arms. And I'd forgotten the nurse's name, but she had been overseas for 3 years. She was holding down this ward with WACs and Corps boys, that's all. No other nurse there. So I come, and we go to the desk, and she said, I've been waiting for a nurse for a long time. I hear you qualified, and you're very smart and very special. Made me feel so good. And she took off keys that she had on her, which were the narcotic keys for the narcotic medicine, because I was now the medication nurse with the card, with my keys, and I was not to take them off and give them to any of the Corps boys or any of the WACs or anybody else. Keep them pinned on there. Just get the medicines out of the cabinet you need and put them back on. Don't lay them down. I'm warning you, don't lay them down any place. Just that's where you keep them. In fact, she pinned them on me. So then we went to the desk and she got out this information she had, which was when the doctors were coming and the patients' charts were lined up A, B, C, and I had 68 patients and 8 were gone for surgery. And there's no recovery rooms. They come back on the floor. She said, and they'll come back and they'll be sick and vomiting. They don't keep them long in the operating room. You have to just have a couple at a time. You'll have to just do the best you can. Oh, this is going through my head like a light. I can remember this day. I'll never forget it. And she said, the doctors come round at 10 o'clock or 10:30. And she said, and you know where the kitchen refrigerator and stuff is. You don't have to do the trays, but you have to make sure that here's a list of those that's on specials. You have to make sure that they get their special trays. Everybody else gets the same tray. They have to eat the same thing. And then she says to me, and this is about, I had to be there 8 o'clock. About 8:30, she's done with me. And she just says, now I am going for a while, and I'll be back as soon as I rest a while. And she left. I didn't see her till 2 o'clock that same day. And nothing was done about it. I didn't see anybody else to complain to. I didn't just did the best I could. And I was smart. And I was thinking what to do.
But you had 68 patients.
I had 68 patients.
And you're by yourself.
And I'm by myself. I had wax.
Oh, okay.
And I had core boys. And they had been there. So they knew which patients they had to do.
Okay.
And they knew what was going on. And I was able to do that because I made friends with the patients. They were my age. They saw the situation I was in. They were smarter than you thought. They had been in bad situations themselves and still coming up. They got out of bed and helped me. Those that could walk, they got out of bed and helped. They held the vomiting pans. I said, you guys, I need help. Who in here could help me? And they got out. The patients helped me as much as the wax and the core boys. But I was a faithful one to them. I never went off duty Friday until every last one of them that wanted to go in town was on the bus. Then I'd go off duty, and sometimes it would be the bus took them in even at 9 o'clock. 8 they were supposed to be ready, but at 9 o'clock the last bus left. And I never went off duty till I helped my patients get on that bus. And a couple wax had hearts, and they stayed with me. But I was a hair cutter. I cut their hair. And then I helped tie their bow ties. Thank God for those that had ties that went around the neck and just snapped instead of a necktie. I learned to tie the necktie. But that's the way we got along then.
You are a very creative and innovative lady, and you obviously enjoyed doing this.
I enjoyed it very much. They were all my friends. I couldn't date them, but they were very loyal to me. Very, very loyal.
What kinds of injuries were they coming home with?
Oh, the worst kind. Every kind. I first was on an amputee ward where the boys lost their arms and legs. The next ward I was on was where everybody's had eye problems. And I even I did volunteer work and helped make some of the prostheses, the new eyes that could be out of plastic, and plastic was a new thing. But they needed extra help, so I could go down there. And my fingers were very agile, so they loved to see me come to help do whatever I had to do, fit them in a little hole that made them exactly the size you needed. You know, this type of thing. So that was another ward. Then I was on a general duty ward where they just plain were sick. I was on a back ward where they had striker frames that I had never seen. the boys were, they were so shot up and so blown apart in these tanks that they had a condition called herniated nucleus pulposus, or your fractured disc, you would call it. So I had a whole ward of them.
All with back problems? They couldn't move?
Well, we had striker frames for those who couldn't move, which is a thing that's flat and one on top. You put the two together and flip them. We couldn't flip them by hand because you might flip the joints that they were trying to line up.
So their backs were so out of whack that they had to be moved on the bed.
Well, they didn't have a bed. They had striker frames.
It was a frame.
Sleeping on.
Okay.
Only when they got better we could put them back in the bed. Okay. And then we had an infectious ward where they came in with pneumonia and all kinds of stuff they caught. And we had all kinds of diseases someplace else that they came, which we didn't know quite what they had. And this is the first introduction for penicillin.
Oh.
So I got to learn about penicillin, and I got to every 4 hours, 4 times, let me see, every 4 hours, 2 cc's every 4 hours, around the clock at first. So sometimes you get off duty on time, and sometimes you did not. Most times you did not, especially when the ships came in and they just arrived. You had to be there. Now we were well cared for. We were fed well. This program was under Lucille Petrie, had the program for the cadet nurses in the United States Army. She was a very excellent nurse, very, very intelligent, and she wasn't going to run this program with cadet nurses that we were mistreated. But we did work overtime, and then we could volunteer on our own time. And that's where I learned to cut hair, because I always volunteered on Fridays to cut the boys' hair because they wanted to get on the bus to go into Richmond to have the girls, and those who had legs wanted to go roller skating or they wanted to do something, and they were released just once a week for activities outside of the base. And because I stayed and cut their hair, put on their ties, try to keep them clean to get to go see their girlfriends in Richmond.
You sound like you really enjoyed it.
Oh, I enjoyed it very much. I'm a young girl. They were all young boys, but we had stipulations. We could not date any of them. But we could date the officers, the doctors, and we could date officers. But I didn't date officers because they were married men, usually. I never had a date in 6 months because I had a young man at home. I had a young man in England in the war, and sort of made a promise to him that I would not get married till he got home. So he sent me, after about 3 months over there, he had his mother get me an engagement ring and give it to me, and I wore it around my neck. I wasn't putting it on until he came home, and we still liked each other, and we got married. We didn't like each other when we got home. I didn't marry him. I dated him a year, I guess in my senior year of high school, and he had to go into service. But he was different when he came home, and I was different. And I hadn't seen him for about 3 years, whatever. And so I didn't marry him. I gave him the ring back, and that was it.
Now, you stayed in nursing through the end of the war in Richmond?
Yes, I ended up there. I did not get back to my hospital. I ended up there, and I had orders to go as a second lieutenant, but they sent me a letter, and I was accepted, and the war stopped 2 weeks before I went. So I never got overseas, I never got my full thing as a veteran for the World War II. I remained a cadet nurse for veterans, but Congress never approved of accepting all the cadets as full veterans. Therefore, I'm not available to go to a veteran hospital. And everybody but the government considers me a veteran. Very few cadet nurse living, but we didn't get it past the full veteran status because the government did not pass it.
Although you were in the military, because you had the...
Oh yes, they got us up every morning at 6 o'clock and drilled us till 7. Hip up,
Right.
or we had to go. And it was a sergeant drill master, a man, drilled us every day.
Did
Who
you
cares?
finish your training, the 3 years of training were completed while you were in Richmond in the service?
Absolutely.
Okay, so in a
was,
way...
It was double. My 3 years of training was complete. It was under public health. It was considered a branch of the public health under Lucille Petrie.
Okay.
And with a promise that we promised we would go into service. Everybody else had their second lieutenant papers too to leave,
Right.
but the war stopped and the promotions stopped. Everything stopped.
They didn't ask you to stay on at the hospital?
Down at there, no. We had to, my training at 3 years was over.
Okay.
I came home. I was without a job. Had to go back home to mother.
Did you ever stay in touch with any of them that you met?
Yes, I did.
Really?
About 4 or 5 of them.
How wonderful.
Yes.
Since that first interview, Vetti has been sought after by many organizations as a speaker to share her stories of her own World War II experiences. Let's see where she's been on the road. Here's where she started, at the World War II American Experience Museum. She's pictured seated with other World War II veterans on that flag-raising ceremony of the new museum, and you see standing in the back the founders of the museum. She also spoke at the Adams County Historical Society on Memorial Day when she was asked to read the names of the World War II veterans who were killed in action. She did that, but she paused when the slide came up behind her as she was reading the names with the picture of Eugene Schellman. Vetti stopped and said, "This was my cousin. Let me tell you about Eugene Schellman." And she went on to bring his story to light, and I'm telling you, there was not a dry eye in the room. Then the library and the YWCA invited her. They called it Living Books Program, where you could actually interact with the people whose stories were being shared. So Vetti spoke to people all over the community about her nursing experiences in World War II. Then the Institute for Retired Persons called, just this year, and we did a Zoom program. You see, I got my picture in the paper too as the moderator of the program, and she shared her stories with a wide audience in multiple parts of the state. Now here she is doing one of her favorite visits at the museum, where the veterans are there greeting people who come in to see the World War II museum. And Vetti has postcards that she signs. She gives autographs. I love the young people who ask for her autograph and for a selfie, of course. So she's a happy camper there. She's seated with Mr. Weaver, who is also a veteran. She was at the opening of the museum called Beyond the Battle Museum, and she's pictured here in front of an actual nurse's uniform from World War II that was donated to the museum. And she's picking up fans all over the place. I love this picture with her and the boys. She's also received medals and certificates. She has met with public officials. It's nice to see her getting her due even at this late date. And here she is, my favorite photo of Vetti at the Memorial Day Parade in Gettysburg, in an authentic World War II Jeep, and she has her name on the Jeep. Now that brings us to her 100th birthday. By the time of her 100th birthday, Vetti was well known in the area, and there were parties all over the place. Her church, her family and friends, the museum had a party for her. Everyone celebrated. And I was fortunate at one of the events where Vetti chose to share her story since World War II, and I think it bears listening to because it shows the spirit of the woman and her values.
When I got to University of Virginia, there were no girls there but me. But I decided I should take a public speaking course. And if you've been in a room with 30 University of Virginia boys, and you were the only girl, it had to be very interesting. So I always started out with a joke. I thought that was the way you did it, because they liked it. And so I'd always say, well, these two men were up in the hospital, and they looked down the road, and they see a manure truck going by. And the one says, what are you doing that? I said, wait a minute. They eat it on your strawberries. They said, what a fool they are. They eat cream and sugar in theirs. So I used to tell that story, plus a million other different ones. And I got started, and I made an A on the course because I had to make an A or B. Because my husband and I went to University of Virginia. We were the first married couple at the University of Virginia, by the way, because it was a boys' university. And it was hard talking your way into this, but if you were a nurse, you could walk across the street, because the University of Virginia, the hospital's right on the grounds, and you could go for free, but you had to make an A or a B. It's a little difficult sometimes, because I was in getting my nursing education degree, and they didn't have enough nurses to teach that. So I had doctors, and I was in with the interns. And so I had to outdo interns for a couple classes. I never had to pay a penny. All I ever did was go across the street where my friend worked when she called me and tell me when a secondhand book came in, and that's when I went and got it. They didn't know a Pennsylvania Dutch girl is going to turn anything. Most of my friends went for a course in psychology or sociology or how to deal with something. I stuck in there 5 full years working as head nurse of orthopedics and ophthalmology, and I earned my way through University of Virginia without paying a penny except buying my secondhand books. And my husband, I met him, and he was doing the same thing. My husband was a real veteran, and he lay on the battlefield, and he had 4 times he was wounded in the hospital and over in Europe, and he was a veteran. I didn't consider myself a veteran at all, and I have to apologize to everybody that knows me beforehand, before I get to Gettysburg. I never told my neighbors in Haddonfield that I'm a second, that I was a veteran. I never mentioned it because he was the one that fought for the Battle of Bulge. Our family celebrated always Veteran Day, but they always we celebrated Dad, not me. I don't know if my children even knew I was a veteran before they did. But I get up here to Gettysburg, the whole world changes. Cookie says to me, Mother, they're going to have the biggest flag at the World War II museum that you've ever seen. I'm taking you. Weren't you in the Second World War? I said, sure I was, Cookie. She said, well, we're going. Well, she got to COVID. So she calls me up in the morning and says, Mom, you have to go. You have to go. So I go, and I slide in with all the people sitting there. And I was having a really good time, and the flag hadn't gone up yet. And all of a sudden, the lady got up and said, any veterans here? I thought, should I tell them in Gettysburg I'm a veteran, or should I not? I thought, better be honest, put my hand up. And she moved me to the next group with the veterans. I wasn't more than sitting down. They never sit in the front row, so I got the front row. She came over there in front of them and said, "Is there any World War II veterans here?" I thought, uh-oh. I said, "Yes." And that ended me up on the stage with 3 other old men. And since that time, my life has changed. See that lady down there? She found me out. And I think she's my promoter. Never called her that till now, but I think she is. Because all I do is be called to speak to people about my story. And John asked me, "Is he going to tell my story?" And I said, "No way. I'm going to talk to my friends. They all know me and I'll tell them." I want to tell you this about it, though, before I don't tell you. I want you to know that I was in the last class of I was my senior year. And that's the last of 3 years. And when the government came, I didn't enlist. They drafted me. I didn't sign anything because I'm also a brethren. And they don't believe in war, which I don't believe in war. I don't believe in killing. But I wasn't on that end of the stick. I was taking care of the boys. And remember, they didn't take any 4Fs, so they were injured young men, but they were not complainers. They were not unhappy. They knew if they got back to the hospital, we'd put new limbs and arms on them and everything, and they'd go home happy. And it was I want to change your mind about that. There's a lot that happens that's both good and bad. And the good thing about war is we have lots of improvements. On that amputee ward, I found out we don't use gauze bandages like the general public, like they did in my York hospital. They use a stretchy bandage called an ace bandage, because we had to bandage those stumps good so they fit in the prostheses so they could use them. And that's when ace bandages were done. And we had very, very sick people, which we can. Now, when they came overseas, the boys stopped at our hospital first. That's where they brought them. And the doctors looked over, and of course, we knew what to do with the dead, because they all didn't quite make it. But then they had them a couple weeks. They looked them over well, and we didn't take any mental health, and we didn't take any paralyzed people. But we did take amputees, and we took back surgery, we took orthopedic surgery, we took everybody who was really sick, too much to move, and we took ophthalmology, and we had artificial eyes before that time were all made out of ceramic. They were made heavy, and a person with an artificial eye, you couldn't deny it. They had an artificial eye. Well, the Army made the first plastic eye. We had the first laboratory where you painted the little pupil, and that was good. They made the first, at this point in time, the first penicillin was given. I gave the first penicillin to an unconscious patient for 3 days, and when he looked up and says, "Where am I?" And he was a naval officer, but he was in an Army hospital because he'd been out in a coma. And so that was important. Penicillin, you all know what it is now, but then it was not in there. So it's good and bad about everything. Let me tell you another little story about good and bad about everything. Even Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's have a good side and a bad side. But an Alzheimer patient can hide his own Easter eggs. So remember, it's good and bad about everything. And when you have something happen that you really, really don't know what to do about, every one of us is a child of God. Every one of you was put here by God's plan. You are all God's children, and we should love each other. The golden text. You don't have to read the Bible from cover to cover. Just learn you must love each other. And if you love each other, you're not going to hurt each other. You're not going to kill them. You're not going to do anything. You're going to be fine. And when you get down to pray, your feet hit the first thing in the morning, you thank the good Lord for your life and for your friends and for the love He's given you of fellowship. And that's the most important thing. You heard my son say, prayers go up and blessings come down. And that is the most important thing I can leave with you. And I know everybody asks me what I eat, what I wear, how I lasted this long, and what's going on and why I got here. I don't know why, except I know the good Lord put me here. And I know He wants me to tell you the secret. Prayers go up and blessings come down. We can't live in this world like it is today without lots of prayers. I hope everybody realizes that. It has changed. You're no longer, you have electricity. I lived in an age we didn't have electricity until I went in training. And he gave me a bathtub, I thought I was going to drown. And that's real. And when we were on dressing with my girlfriend, I had all feed bag clothes with all flowers. Even my bra, and Mother made me my underwear, and my slip. They're all feed bags with pretty flowers. And I look at her and she has something white and slippy on. No pattern. I pitied her, but I didn't say anything. So, remember, it's just you are who you are, and the good Lord made you and expect you to use your common sense. So just remember, say your prayers first before you start your busy day. And for that will be my biggest blessing. And I don't know how many brought me presents who weren't supposed to, but who I did. I could not write all their thank you notes for presents. Before Christmas, I wouldn't have time to get them done. So don't expect a written thank you note, because I'm not buying those 68-cent stamps. Thank you again for coming.